The Los Angeles Clippers are stuck in a tough spot here in the Western Conference as this year coming up, they have a very solid roster of key core players that are a little bit older on the veteran side, and in a Western Conference that's young, enticing, and continuing to get better. This could ultimately see potentially the fall of the Clippers here of these last couple reigns where they have been pretty solid, or we could see once again another year where they bounce back and outdo all the odds and actually perform to their expectations regardless of their veterans, regardless of their injuries, and make a key playoff push. We're going to be breaking down and diving in on this Clippers offseason breakdown here on Swish City on this episode here. So if you are a Clippers fan and this is your first time tuning in, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Did I do the Clippers justice, or did I completely butcher their offseason and their plans for their future that you guys held for this team? Once again, like I mentioned, we've already broken down plenty of other teams on this channel, and this is the Clippers video today. So if you are here, hope you enjoy. But if you want to see some other teams and are interested in a series like this, definitely check out the playlist, as we've already dove into 20 other teams across the league, and we're almost done with the series here today. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's explore the Clippers. So like I said, we're going to be diving in and exploring this Los Angeles Clippers team, and last season outdid a lot of the doubters and haters, including myself. I personally thought with the veteran roster that they had and with the injuries with some of these guys on their roster that they do have injury history to some of these guys they have on their roster originally, I thought the Clippers would be a bottom 5 team in this Western Conference, but they clearly proved me wrong alongside many others, finishing 50-32 and 5th in the Western Conference, and put up a good battle as well versus the Denver Nuggets in the first round, which the Denver Nuggets ultimately gave the Oklahoma City Thunder a really good battle as well, which ultimately leads to show you that this Clippers team was a very solid roster, top to bottom, on both sides of the floor. Like I mentioned, they had some key players on this team, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard really being those two superstars after losing Paul George this offseason for basically nothing and got nothing in return because he signed somewhere else. They didn't do a sign and trade, but ultimately the Clippers were able to bounce back, filling in those replicatable roles on the offensive and defensive end to supplement Paul George's needs. And Norman Powell was clowned at the beginning of the season for basically stating that, saying he was going to transform and be this better player for the Clippers, and ultimately he lived up to those standards. In the first half of the season, he obviously was very effective on the offensive side of the ball, dealt with some injuries later on for the Clippers that definitely hindered his performance, and which allowed the center for the Clippers here to really stand out and make an impact in the second half of the season in Ivica Zubac, who was one of the best defenders in the NBA this season, if not the best defensive center, one of the best defensive centers, He was absolutely impactful for leading this Clippers charge on the defensive end, and I think is on one of the best valuable contracts for the Clippers. The Clippers also have some key free agents. Patty Mills just joined the front office, so I don't necessarily see him coming back to the NBA. But Nicholas Batum and James Harden, like I mentioned, are both on those player options. Amir Coffey, who's played as a solid role as a rotational wing for this team over the last couple of seasons, could also be brought back. And Ben Simmons, the guy that they added at the buyout market from the Brooklyn Nets, also could be looked at as a piece for the Clippers here as a rotational piece. Now the Clippers are sitting in underneath the tax threshold, so we'll have to use some money, and with these free agents I think we'll go out there and do so. But also on the trade market could also use some of their flexibility to go out and add some more key players to this roster. They do have pick 30 and 51 in this year's upcoming draft, and they do have some future draft capital in 2030 and 2032. And that's ultimately where it comes down for the Clippers, and what do they want to do here, right? They could ultimately kind of go in for this all-out push now with James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and try to win a championship in LA by going and trying to add some more key role players or stars that maybe can take sacrificial roles to really help cater this team into that next step. Or they could realistically say, with this young Western Conference really coming in, we can still stay in the middle of the pack here and still stay competitive, but also still invest into some young capital and some draft prospects, so that when these older stars and Harden and Kawhi start to fizzle out and start to obviously not be as impactful as they are right now, we can still have some young guys to really build through and kind of change the leaf here for this Los Angeles Clippers squad. So let's dive in and let's explore some potential guys that I think could be traded in the offseason, depending on what direction the Clippers really decide to go to. So the first one, like I mentioned, is who had a great impactful season is Norman Powell, and because of that, obviously, I think this brings Powell's value up. Obviously, Norman Powell, we've seen throughout his career on multiple teams be a solid starter, but also a really good, role player as well, as like a six-man type of guy, can be that effective piece. And I truly do believe on a really good playoff team or a championship caliber team, a guy like Norman Powell could be that fifth starter / six man for you as a key impact scorer. You can also hustle hard and play that solid defense, can play the one and can play the two. So on or off ball capabilities for Norman Powell will be able to at least generate you some quality on offensive side of the ball. The one thing here with Norman Powell is I do think he brings a great value for the Clippers, specifically in their guard rotation, right? If we want to dive in and look back, Chris Dunn, James Harden, Norman Powell, I really like that guard rotation there. You have some key impact defenders, you have some good scorers as well. Maybe you look to identify that by bringing in a defensive, point guard that is a little bit younger to kind of fill in that threshold as a fourth guard here, but I really like this kind of core that they have. I don't think a guy like Norman Powell needs to be traded, as well as he's on a pretty flexible contract. I believe it's around 18 to 20-ish, mid-20s. So it's not like he's making too much to where it's a bad contract, but also where it's like, hey, teams might be really enticed to take on this deal because it is a cheap deal. Maybe some other teams are interested, but I do think the Clippers have other tradable contracts that they would rather to move off of first of than a Norman Powell. The only way I see Norman Powell being involved in a trade is kind of similar to what I was saying with the Clippers, is if they want to go out and add some more star power to this team, as Norman Powell would probably be one of the tradable contracts, but also good value contracts as well that a team would like to take in return for an upgrade if the Clippers are looking for it at the guard or at the wing. Now, this player I think is a little bit more feasible to trade for the Clippers, and that's Bogdan Bogdanovic. He was acquired in the second half of the season last year at the trade deadline, where he was a late trade, which, to be honest, off the top of my head, I do not remember what the deal was, including Bogdan Bogdanovic, so someone please remind me down below in the comments section. Oh, it was Terrence Mann. Yes, it was Terrence Mann, but they went and got Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Bogdanovic doesn't really fit, once again, kind of similar with this core, right? Like, he can play scorer off the wing and you could use him as a 2-3, but truly I do believe in this guard rotation, if you already have James Harden, you already have Norman Powell, there's really no need for a Bogdan Bogdanovic. And if you're the Clippers, you want to add some wing size, looking with a tradable contract, once again, in Bogdan around $17 million is feasible. Now, his shot and his shooting numbers weren't as great this season as they were in the past, and that's why I do think he was a little bit more on the trade market and could potentially be an obstacle for the Clippers to trade eventually. But every team needs a scorer. Every team needs a three-point shooter. Bogdanovic in Atlanta was a perfect, and I mean perfect, six-man type scorer with his microwave efficiency and his ability to, heat up when the team needed him most. And I do think for a squad that is very defensive and once again, could value that shooting. Maybe it's a Memphis Grizzlies if they move off of Grayson Allen. Maybe it's an Orlando Magic if they're looking to add on the fringes and don't want to go all out. This is the type of player you're looking to continuously add, who's a veteran, who's been around the league for a couple years, and can play both sides of the ball, but also be an effective scorer, and Bogdanovic is that type of dude. And then lastly, similar to Norman Powell, I don't really see this guy being traded unless the Clippers are going out and get a star, because he's on I believe, 2-year, $10 million deal and plays fantastic defense. It's Derrick Jones Jr. He made an impact with the Mavericks last year on their big final run and has made an impact defensively as a lengthy piece on the defensive end for every team he has played for. The high-flying, effective dunker, obviously notoriously known for the first part of his career in offense, is really, really solid on the defensive end. And I think if you're a team specifically needing some defense on the wing, especially on a cheap contract, on a guy that's going to be able to come out and play 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes for you, 15 to 20 minutes for you, 25 maybe in some certain games, as that effective 3, 4, wherever you need him to fill in for you on the defensive end, helping out on stars, giving you that hustle defense, making key impact plays, throwing his body out there on the floor. Derrick Jones Jr. is that guy, and I think that's what the Clippers want. He embodies that type of mentality. He fits well alongside Kawhi Leonard. I do not see the Clippers entertaining a trade revolving around Derrick Jones Jr. once again. The only way I see them doing a deal like this is similar to Norman Powell, was if they need to get an upgrade at that wing position, they can get it, and they have to use multiple deals to go out and do so, and Derrick Jones Jr. would be a caveat of doing that, because they feel like they can still add that defensive wing out in free agency. So now let's look at the draft for the Los Angeles Clippers. Like I mentioned, pick 30 and pick 51. We're not looking at second round picks. If you've looked at the previous videos with teams that haven't round first round picks, we haven't been able to look at the draft in a while. And for the Clippers here, I have been looking at some picks around the late end of the draft, and it's really weird with the end of the draft here this year. I feel like this season, from picks 20 to picks like 35, anyone is going anywhere on any of those mock drafts, right? And you realistically could say that this player needs this player, this one needs this one, but with, Shams and Brian Windhorst and everyone's saying this is going to be the most active offseason ever, I do believe we will see some picks getting traded, and that will lead to, some teams not even potentially even selecting at that position and having guys fall later down in the draft. And there's also always guys that fall in the draft that are highly touted, highly scouted, guys that people are really keen on. So I do believe for the Los Angeles Clippers here, sitting at pick 30 is pretty nice. They potentially could trade up in the draft, but I don't necessarily see them doing that because I don't think they have really any talent to really attach alongside that with it. Obviously, young guys in Kobe Brown and Cam Christie could be used, but I don't see them doing that. Maybe so. Let's dive in. Let's look at the Clippers. We got 3 guys that I think you could draft. 2 of them, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think necessarily going to be there for the Clippers, but I think they would be perfect fits. One of them I think could be there, and I think would be a great fit. So the first player we're going to be talking about is Maxime Reynaud. I've talked about him on a bunch of these videos, but he's a fantastic scoring big, 7 foot tall, and can space the floor. And for the Los Angeles Clippers, they're known for Ivica Zubac, right? He's a solid paint defender. He can be a great interior guy, but he can't really stretch out the floor, correct? By adding a guy in Maxime Reynaud, that allows you to invest into that, with also you not really having a clear destination on your backup center. We know that they tried to bring back Mo Bamba and try to work that out. They didn't get that really to fix, so then they ended up trading him and PJ Tucker for Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills. Drew Eubanks is on a non-guaranteed deal. He doesn't really have a fit here. Ben Simmons played some small ball 5. But he obviously can't shoot the ball. A player in Maxime Reynaud allows the Los Angeles Clippers to bring a guy into their building that does not do a role that they have on their roster. A shooting stretch-out 5 that allows them to have that ability to when they want to use that. And I think that when you're an NBA team, right, you need to pause and look at every single role out there. And yeah, some roles may cater to your play style and may benefit you a little bit more. That's why a guy like Zubac is key. But also a guy in Maxime Reynaud who gives you the opposite and complements what Ivica Zubac cannot do, I think is also key for a team and wanting to try to find these young pieces and hit in the draft. So Maxime Reynaud would be that first guy that I look at. Another big that can also shoot pretty well, can space the floor, is also a very solid passing big, is Danny Wolf. Now Wolf, once again, similar to Maxime Reynaud, is very variable on this draft board here. There's places where he's going as high as at the end of the lottery. There's places where he's going as low as pick 28, 29, potentially even 30 here falling if he were able to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, personally, I see a guy in Maxime Reynaud falling a little bit more than Danny Wolf because Wolf had played at Yale, has played at Michigan. Maxime Reynaud playing at Stanford, a little bit of a smaller school, went up against some weaker competition. But I do think that a guy like Wolf, once again, could bring those qualities that Ivica Zubac doesn't have in that front court as a scorer and as a passing big that would definitely help out this Los Angeles Clippers team. Can you imagine Danny Wolf in the low post playing alongside Ivica Zubac or with Ivica Zubac out and looking out in the perimeter and just having perfect passes to guys like James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Norman Powell? If you keep Bogdanovich on the wing to just hit those catch and shoot threes, it is going to be an absolute cheat code for the Los Angeles Clippers. And I do think that big man department is really key to look at. And lastly, maybe they go out and get a wing if they do trade a guy like Derrick Jones Jr., like we had mentioned, or maybe if they don't bring back a guy, Nicholas Batum, even though I do see them bringing him back. But a key guy that I'd be looking to look at to add is Walter Clayton Jr. He was a proven winner. He showed that in the March Madness tournament, leading Florida to this championship here this past season. And he has all those kind of skills and complements of an offensive guy in James Harden. He's ready to take over. He's ready to command. He's ready to take those big time shots and be that big time face. And I think a mentor in James Harden would be absolutely perfect for Walter Clayton and this Los Angeles Clippers team. With a lot of teams as well not really prioritizing guards, a guy like Walter Clayton could easily slip and fall past all these places and land into the Clippers' lap at pick 30, where they can strike out and take their next version of James Harden for their future. Like I mentioned earlier on, the Clippers are kind of stuck, right? They have these older veterans in a younger Western Conference that's rising and maybe even getting those key impact players like a Walter Clayton to still play alongside James Harden, but also maybe replicate that role when he does get older or when he does retire or when he does eventually leave the Clippers. Could be that next phase of having that scoring guard alongside this team and could easily step up to be that in the future in this league with the Clippers if he's given the role. So like I mentioned, those are the guys that I'm really looking at for the Los Angeles Clippers here in the draft and ultimately this Clippers offseason and breakdown. Personally, I do believe they will stand pat. I do believe that they will keep these veterans, bring back James Harden, right? Explore really what they want to do this offseason. Maybe dangle a Norman Powell or a Bogdanovich out there on the trade market, but relatively stand pat. add some key players, and look to make some noise in this Western Conference once again. Like I stated, they finished 5th last year, and there are some young, enticing teams as well around them that are still going to stay relatively good, or even some teams below them are trying to get better. But I do feel confident that this Clippers team will at least be a play-in team next season, regardless of the fact, all due to the spots that they have key impact players and role players that are ready to step up and deliver. And if they can even address that position and find out more guys that can really step up, building similar to a team like Indiana with their 2 stars that are in Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam with key role players, then we could see this Clippers team changing the course really soon. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Once again, do you agree what I did with the Los Angeles Clippers? Do you not agree? I really do appreciate all your guys' thoughts. Sorry for no upload yesterday. That's why we're doing here's today. We'll have a double upload for you guys this weekend as well, getting done the team that I missed on Friday. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out.